Sonic the Hedgehog is an icon. Take the character, paint it black, everybody still knows who it is because of the iconic silhouette. How Naoto Oshima was able to come up with this character design baffles me. It was pure genius. Sonic the Hedgehog's design, in my opinion, is one of the key reasons it's prominent in today's culture, as it is. As a matter of fact, all the characters are impeccably designed. It's very appealing, and you can see why so many children across the world are just drawn to these characters. They translate so well into everything. They started off as video game characters and then evolved into comic book characters, then cartoon characters, and now movie characters. Due to how iconic Sonic the Hedgehog is, he's been able to tap into almost every form of media possible. So how has that worked out for the character? Being a video game character doesn't always work when going into other forms of media. Well, with Sonic, it's a different story. Have there been some duds? Oh yeah, big duds. But as a whole, I think Sonic's been very successful in every form of media that's not game related that he's stepped into. The movie was really good. It was really good. Both comic book series have been critically acclaimed. There have been a few good TV shows. Sonic has done good outside of video games. In fact, I think he does better outside of video games. Now let me clarify, this statement doesn't mean that I hate Sonic video games by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I'm 10 times more tolerant than most people on Earth because my favorite video game of all time is Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. That is not a joke. I really do love that game. And I also love a bunch of other games. Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Generations, Sonic Mania, pretty much all of the classic games. Not to mention those Sonic Rush titles, oh my gosh, those were fantastic. Also, Sonic Heroes is pretty underrated. Heck, I'm even somewhat of a fan of Lost World in a way. Because despite me being one of the most positive people in the fan base, whenever I do say something negative about Sonic, people like to label me as either a fake fan or that I'm being overly negative, when really, I'm not overly negative. I just should criticize things that are, negative energy. I don't know how anybody can really defend Sonic Boom Rise a lyric. When there's negative energy and negativity in general, you should address it. You should get rid of it. And I think that the Sonic the Hedgehog video game branch has definitely created more negativity in recent years than it has positive, and that will only lead Sonic down a darker path. Sonic the Hedgehog started as a video game character, but he did other things in that time as well. He had those 2 TV shows out, he had the comic books, but alongside that, he also had Sonic 1, Sonic CD, Sonic 2, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It was a good time period for Sonic. Sonic was nothing but an outlet for quality. Nothing here is inherently bad. In Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, whether you like or dislike it, it's funny. The games were cutting edge. Cutting edge. No one else was doing stuff like that. I was around 10 years removed from this time period. I wasn't even alive for Sonic Adventure 2, so I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I'm still able to consume the media and observe what the times were like back then, and it was good. Sonic wouldn't be who he is today without those years. But then you enter the new millennium. You have the adventure titles. Even though the first one was released in 1999, that game is still technically part of the 2000s along with 2001 Sonic Adventure 2. Those did amazing things for the franchise and were cutting edge for the time as well. Sonic was always trying something new, doing something different, being progressive and starting a new wave when it came to those types of video games. People still look back on them fondly to this day, and even if there's some errors that people are grabbing for, do you really expect for 20-year-old plus titles to live up to your modern day PS4 games? I don't think so. Like the titles that came before them, they were cutting edge. Not only that, but they were genuine. They put hard work into these games. They really tried to do something different and new. People can see through fake. We're living in an era of real, and to this day I can see the realness that comes out of this game, the hard work and effort that was put into this title. Same thing with the first one, because it was the first one. They had no idea what they were doing with this title. It was their first outing with Sonic in 3D. But they made it work because they cared. They cared about this character and they cared about what they were crafting because they needed to have it work. Not to mention that as a storyteller, I can respect the efforts that they did with this. It was different, and I hate saying this word so much, but it was cutting edge. There's a reason why it's adapted so much. It's because it was creative, innovative, and just so enthralling. They made almost an entirely new mythos for this character, and it's so intriguing. Speaking of the character, they made a great character for Sonic with what they had. They perfectly captured just a guy who loves adventure with Get this, an American voice actor working with Japanese directors for one line each. No readings with the other actors, no sense of flow, no idea of what the context is. Sonic cares, Sonic is challenged. Sonic falls on his ass repeatedly, not just once. In fact, most of the characters do. I think that Tails' arc in Sonic Adventure is absolutely beautiful. Don't even get me started on the progressions of Gamma and also Shadow in Sonic Adventure 2. They did a great job at building a new Sonic the Hedgehog. They weren't scared because in order to step into the future and to move forward, you have to take that first step. And they did it very well. Unfortunately, the Sonic Adventure titles weren't enough to hold Sega up completely. They eventually stopped making hardware and became a third-party company, which means they are now just making games for other game developers such as Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. The first real game to come out around that time, aside from ports and handheld titles, was Sonic Heroes. Sonic Heroes is an anomaly. It's very strange, it's out of place. I don't feel like anybody was expecting anything other than Sonic Adventure 3, but the reason I've been building up to this game so much is because this was the first crack in Sonic's armor, and also this is where my entire thesis began to show its colors. I just want to make it clear, I do not dislike Sonic Heroes. I actually think it's a pretty competent game. It's my first Sonic game of all time, but I do think it's safe to say it is a downgrade from the Sonic Adventure titles. But it sold really well. It's one of the best-selling Sonic games of all time. There are two reasons for that in my opinion. First things first, it is the first actual Sonic the Hedgehog title, aside from ports, to be on other consoles other than Sega consoles, meaning that a bunch of people who own Xboxes, PlayStations, and GameCubes were able to finally play an original Sonic title for the first time. It's huge, it's a smart business decision, it reaches much more people, but there was something else that came out that year that helped the sales of it so much more. It's so weird. Sonic X, man. I have the strangest relationship with this show. It's what introduced me to Sonic, but I have such a rocky relationship with it. I have so many gripes with the character and depiction of Sonic. I hate Chris so much, but gosh darn, I still like it. The first two seasons are not that great in my opinion. Slice of Life is fun. I think Sonic Boom is a great example of that. But honestly, the Star Trek-ish season 3 is my kind of speed. I'm not even a giant Star Trek fan. It's intriguing, I'll give it that. And it reached a lot of people. It reached me. And that raises the question in your head, who is this guy? So you'll go check out the games, you'll go check out the comics, you'll buy a couple toys, you'll wear a t-shirt. That happens when you get hooked on a franchise. That's what happens when you become a fan. For once in Sonic's history, it wasn't the game that was holding up the rest of the franchise, it wasn't the comic book, it was the TV show. It had a solid 3 seasons, it was in syndication and reruns until 2014. It was different, but Sega still was going to do what they always have done. Make video games. And I think a lot of you guys know where this all went after Sonic Heroes. We got Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, the storybook games, and we did get Sonic Unleashed in there, but at the time, that game was not beloved at all. Let's not mention that although there were the Rush games, there was also Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood. Sonic was falling flat on video games, and don't get me wrong, I don't dislike the Dark Age. Do I hate what it did to the franchise? Hell yeah. But do I hate everything that it put out? No, I find a lot of enjoyment in a lot of it. You heard what I said about Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. But the truth is, the games simply aren't good. I can acknowledge Sonic 06 is not a well-made game, but I still love it. Sonic was being carried. Not being carried by the adventure games anymore, or even Sonic Heroes. Sonic was being carried by reruns of Sonic X, the Sonic the Hedgehog Archie comics, and Jazzware's action figures. Nobody saw it at the time. Everybody viewed Sonic as a video game character because there were so many games coming out at once. Multiple game releases a year, which is unheard of nowadays in the 2020s. Sonic was still a video game character, but everything non-video game related was working out way better for him. This all changed when we entered the 2010s. The first game we got was Sonic Colors, and while I'm not the biggest fan of Sonic Colors, I can acknowledge that it's a well-made game. It's very competent, and it was critically acclaimed, and the fans seemed to really enjoy it at the time. But what if this was a fluke? That same year we also got Sonic Free Riders, and that was an abomination. But thankfully that was just a one-off experience made for horrible hardware. The following year we got without a doubt one of the best Sonic the Hedgehog video games of all time, Sonic Generations. Sega was doing it. They were able to have all of the same stuff going on. Sonic X reruns, the Archie comics were going strong, the Jazzwares line was more successful than ever. It seemed like Sonic was getting right back on track, and with some successful mobile games and also a fantastic racing title, it seemed like everything was going pretty great, until this happened. Sega and Nintendo signed a 3-game exclusivity deal, meaning the next 3 Sonic the Hedgehog games would be exclusive to Nintendo hardware. This was mainly because the Wii U was struggling at the time and they needed more hits to really bring sales up. Unfortunately, the Sonic titles that came out weren't enough to do so, because the next Sonic game was Sonic Lost World. While it was interesting in concept and all the promotional material gave it a lot of promise and had fans excited, unfortunately it was pretty underwhelming. They really had something great going with what they did with Sonic Unleashed, Colors, and Generations. They kinda just tossed all that out of the window for Sonic Lost World, and while you can appreciate them doing something different, it just didn't work. It was a step back. It wasn't horrible, but it's definitely not the kind of titles you want to consistently make. They had something really good going, and it wasn't the time for an experiment yet, or to change anything up. It was just time to move forward, wonder what was coming next. But what came next was one of the worst decisions Sega ever made. On February 6th, the Sonic Boom side franchise was announced. Something new to grab Western audiences, which was strange. Sonic was very popular in the early 2010s. When this was announced, Sonic was doing really good. In fact, Sonic is more popular in the West than he is anywhere else. It was a very strange choice, but I was all for it because they seemed to be taking Sonic really seriously. They were really gonna try and push the character. A new TV show was finally in the works after such a long wait. Multiple new video games were coming out. Also, a giant marketing campaign. This was awesome, but now looking back on it, why couldn't they just have done this with modern Sonic? At this time, Sonic wasn't having an identity crisis, and this launched Sonic into his identity crisis he's having right now in terms of video games. The redesigns don't bother me. I don't care. They're not bad. They're actually pretty great, although I do feel the sports tape is unnecessary. The issue is that it confuses the audience. He does look different. There's a new name, a new setting, and the characters are still an amplified version of who they were in the main series. Just change their characters up a bit if they're too bland for you in the main series. Spice things up. It's so eerily similar to the main series Sonic that there's almost no reason to have a new franchise out of it. But what can we take away from it? What can Sonic learn now from Sonic Boom? Well, the thesis of this video. Sonic Boom the cartoon was really good. I actually think it's the best Sonic cartoon of all time. It's funny, it's well written, it's entertaining as hell. Also, those comic books by Archie were really good. Those were made by Ian Flynn and co, and they did a fantastic job. But what about those games I mentioned earlier? Yeah, well, here it is. This is the worst Sonic the Hedgehog game of all time. Some people like to say Sonic 06 is the worst, but I still feel like people don't take the time to realize that this is actually the worst Sonic the Hedgehog game ever made. This game actually makes me mad. It almost killed Sonic the Hedgehog. There's the defense of, oh, it's just a side game, it's not part of the main series. Well, Sonic's name is still attached to it. His face is still on it. People still know that's Sonic. As a 12-year-old kid playing this for the first time, I was broken. I was on the phone with my friend while I played this game, and the slow realization that what I was playing was awful hurt both of us deeply. It was rushed, clunky, and just a horrible concept from the jump. When I say bad things about Sonic Boom, people just think I hate everything about Sonic Boom, and that's not true. I love the TV show, it was really good. I just hate the concept of Sonic Boom. I despise what the game did to the franchise. Sonic Boom perfectly exemplifies my thesis. Sonic the Hedgehog works way better as a cartoon character than he does as a video game character, because whenever Sonic is put in a video game, it almost puts the entire franchise on the line. Sonic Boom the cartoon, the comic book, that's mainly because whenever Sonic is put in a story-heavy environment, he just works better, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the character, how infectious he is, the concept of him, the appearance of him, the people that they get to work on it. The best appearances of him in terms of being a cartoon character would definitely be Sonic Boom and also the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. I think the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is a great story and has an even better character. In fact, the best depiction of the character. But what about the new Sonic games, you might be asking? Well, those are the most bland, mediocre things on the planet. Minus Mania, which is just a game that could have released like almost 30 years ago. Everything else else is nothing special, mainly Sonic Forces and TSR, since those are basically the only things other than Mania we've got since Boom. And with the mainline Sonic games coming out every 4 or 5 years, Sega's displayed that the franchise can't be consistent in terms of its output of content, in terms of video games. I think Sonic's evolved. In fact, I think Sonic evolved almost 15 years ago. The franchise showed it didn't just need video games to hold up the rest of it. It showed that the cartoon could hold up the rest of it. Sonic X, whether you love it or hate it, was extremely popular. And Sega's tried to do it again, but they messed up because they tried to make an entirely new franchise with it. They didn't need to. Sonic is fine. Sonic is already popular enough here in America. That's been displayed with the movie. The Sonic video games have displayed that the writing limits the character. You can't do too much with it. There's an amazing universe that they've built, but they can't do anything with it because of the writing and budget that limits them with video games. With cartoons, movies, and comics, that's an entirely different world that you can explore. Am I saying shut down the Sonic the Hedgehog video games? No. Sonic the Hedgehog video games can be released every year, and they can be fantastic. I'm not saying that Sonic will never have a good video game again, and I'm not saying that they should just stop making video games. But what I'm saying is that it's been displayed over and over again that Sonic doesn't need the video games to hold up the rest of the franchise, and that doesn't need to be their focus. And actually it works better when it's not the focus. And it says a lot when you release bomb after bomb after bomb, and it still is alive because of the backbone that you've made with everything else. The level of consistency that comes with Sonic being just a cartoon character, just being the character, says a lot. The inconsistency and the mediocrity of the games lately shows that maybe being a video game character isn't what they need to do right now. Step back, assess what you're doing, because even after 30 years of living, you still discover new things about yourself. You're not just created and you don't just stay a baby forever. You grow and prosper. Sonic has grown, and he's grown into something bigger than just video games. I think Sega needs to realize that, because Sonic the Hedgehog is an icon.